I'm going to call this meeting to order. And will you all please stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up, we have roll call. Please sign in. Holly?
All councilors present and a quorum has been declared.
Thank you. Next up, we have agenda approval. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? Holly? Councilor?
Mr. Mayor, I might suggest that just in terms of the order of the agenda, we do the, it got moved here on my screen, but anyway, we do the considerations of the marijuana ballot questions first and have a public comment session during that. So we have a number of cards that have been turned in. I counted 26, I think. If there's anybody who wants to make citizen comment not on marijuana, now would be the time to do that, or at the next agenda item would be the time to do that. But if people are here to comment on marijuana, I think the appropriate time is to consider that issue and open it up for public comment once we've done the council staff introduction of the issue.
So at this point in time, we want citizen comments for anything other than the marijuana issue.
Once the agenda's been approved, yes.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second on the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please.
Mr. Gay, you are not a member of the council
You're
anymore.
Changing the order of the agenda. You're going to act on the ballot issue prior to discussion?
No. We're going to move that issue up to be the first one to be considered.
Right.
Thank you. Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And so we will move on into our regular business, and that would be audience comments other than marijuana issues. Please step forward to the podium, identify yourself if you have a comment. Mr. McCann.
Dan McCann, 1809 Sunset, Alamosa, Colorado. Now, most of us drive, and recently, you want to learn from this stuff. There were 2 rollovers, and when you have rollovers, doors open up. A lady survived. She was wearing seatbelts, and a young man, if I got it right, was 23 from Michigan, and he didn't make it. Please instill in your children to wear seatbelts when they drive. And what's really stupid is there's no fool like an old fool, because usually the Valley Courier prints whether or not somebody's wearing seatbelts, and you got some people in their 40s or 50s not wearing belts. They don't make it. The other comment I've got is about the water. Now, we win the tree award all the time, and water fluctuates in the valley. And you go to some of these places that have had dry years and years. You go to Santa Fe, you're not seeing lawns. And to me, winning the tree award, it may look good, but I've talked to people who really know this stuff. Cottonwoods, these trees just suck it and suck it and suck it. So, over the years, you need to make adjustments. And the time to do something isn't when you're backed up against the wall.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to consideration of resolution setting ballot language on marijuana questions. Councilor?
All right, Council. So At your work session on August 10th, you discussed some issues with respect to whether or not to put a question concerning allowing marijuana facilities within city limits, given the fact that we had been put on notice as a city that there was a petition being circulated to put an initiative on the ballot for that purpose. That petition did not garner sufficient signatures, and the question became whether council wanted to refer to the voters a question concerning allowing marijuana within city limits. Right now, as we discussed, marijuana is prohibited except for marijuana testing facilities. All other types of marijuana facilities are prohibited within city limits pursuant to ordinance of council. After that work session, I prepared for you 2 different draft resolutions that would present those questions to the voters. Each of those resolutions addresses a separate question for each type of facility. In other words, there are 7 types of marijuana facilities recognized by both the Constitution and now the medical and retail marijuana codes. So there was a separate question for each one of those types of facilities. You don't have to refer questions that way. You can combine them all into one. You can combine them all into any combination that you want. You can refer one or more or none of the questions. That's what's up for discussion tonight, is how do you want to do that, if you want to do that. There is another breakpoint between the 2 resolutions that are drafted for your consideration. One of the resolutions separates out a taxation question separately that would apply to any type of facility that were to be allowed, and then has simpler questions for the allowance of each of those 6 types of facilities. The other resolution combines the taxation question with the allowance question, such that if a vote to allow is positive, then a vote to allow a tax on that facility is also positive, just because they go hand in hand. So that's another thing for you to consider about how you want to structure the question if you do indeed refer a question to the voters. Also, as background material, I gave you information concerning the statutory and constitutional definitions of what each of these different types of facilities are. We can certainly talk about that if any of that's unclear, and to the extent I understand it, I can let you know what my understanding is. And just as further background information, there is a list that the Colorado Municipal League put together of various taxation questions that had been presented since 2013. So just for background information, a list of what various municipalities around the state have done by way of tax rates is primarily why that was included. You'll see they range anywhere from, I think, 3% up to 15% or something. So that's kind of the background. And I do note a large audience tonight. I counted 26 comment cards that people filled out wanting to speak. I guess I would suggest to you as council that if we limit comments to 3 minutes per speaker, you're looking at 70 some odd minutes of commentary, and that seems appropriate. And I know, Mayor, I'll keep the time, but if, you know, we need to all work together to respect time and efficiency tonight.
I think the other part too is if you've heard your ideas presented, instead of continuing to present the same ideas, maybe we can do a show of hands to see who's in favor of the comments that have just been made. I know we probably don't want to get into clapping and cheering for management of the meeting, but if there is someone that provides comments in favor, we can see a show of hands. That will still allow council to get a feel for how much support there is for the different comments that are being made.
Thank you, Heather. And shall we discuss this among ourselves first, or shall we just
Yes,
go
I
right?
think that would make some sense, just to
Okay.
make sure we have the...
Council, why don't, you obviously have had an opportunity to look at the resolutions, and is there any discussion specific to the resolutions that were presented to us? The
Mayor.
options are to consider the resolutions individually, altogether, or just not to consider the resolutions at all. Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, and thank you to all the citizens and residents who came out here tonight. It's obvious by the turnout that this issue is a great concern for all of the community members. It's going to be a challenge for Council to make a decision on the direction that we should go in. Staff and Eric, I would like to thank you also for the time and effort and energy that you put into this in such a short time. My comments are, over the past 3 to 4 days or a week or so, my phone's been ringing off the hook by many of you out there in the audience and by several people who were not able to make it here tonight. As a city council member, you always want to be fair and do what you think is right for the masses of the people. For me, this situation is somewhat challenging, but also clear to a certain point. At some point in time, we had a particular group of people who formed a petition, and their role was to go out and get enough signatures to make sure that the marijuana issue was placed on the ballot in their particular wording. Unfortunately for this group, they fell short of getting enough signatures to go on the ballot. And as a council member, we have a process in place for getting certain things on the ballot, and we have to keep and maintain that process, in my opinion, so that we don't set a bad precedent for the community when there are other important issues that need to be placed on the ballot. For me, when I was looking at this and talking with people throughout the community, since the party was not successful with getting the required ballot signatures for the ballot, most people don't believe that we should move forward with putting this on the ballot this year. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe that at some point in time, because this issue is not going to go away, at some point in time we will have to put it on the ballot, but council has had prior conversations about putting issues like this on the ballot, but at a later date and time, possibly in 2017, when we've had an opportunity to evaluate and understand all of the issues pertaining to this issue. Unfortunately, to me, this seems like we're pressed to make a decision to put something on the ballot in such a short time. So at this time, I am not in favor of us rushing into placing this issue on the ballot because we did not get enough signatures on the original ballot. I understand that this may cost the city an extra $10,000 or $15,000 in the future if they get enough signatures for us to have a special election. I respect that, but I believe the citizens of Alamosa will understand that if we have to dole out the extra $10,000 to $15,000 in the future, and we're abiding by a process that we have in place, and the petitioners have followed that process, I don't think we're going to have too much of a pushback from the citizens if we follow that process and make sure that we have the ample time to do the research and to make sure that we do everything that we could do possible to make sure that we have the right wording on the ballot when that time comes. I just do not think in this short time period we've had enough time to evaluate everything that we need to put it on the ballot, maybe in 2017. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. Anyone else with a comment? No clapping, please, 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 no clapping. Thank you. Before I open this up to the folks that presented cards to me, I did want to I did want to say a few things. You know, this public comment period on marijuana, you know, it's very controversial and emotional for each and every one of us. And so as citizens in our community, I think it's important for us to be respectful. I encourage respectful dialogue during this public hearing. And as elected officials, we want to hear what you have to say and value the information that's going to be brought forth. Council wants to know how many citizens on either side of this issue are here, and so I may ask for a show of hands once we start the process and determining the position of the for or against. In the interest of streamlining and facilitating the discussion, please realize that repetition needs to be kept to a minimum and new information is always necessary for us. Thank you for your participation and your presence. And so I will start with Mr. Terry Wiley. Mr. Wiley, would you please come to the podium, identify yourself and your address if you think it's necessary.
I'm Terry Wiley. I'm at 4997 South County Road. I'm out of the city limits. Personally, and as a professional chiropractor and nutritionist here in town, I'm looking at some of the issues with marijuana. And the social economic, the costs are not often brought to the table as far as the social costs that go with it. We have 5 of the poorer counties in Colorado, and the lower socioeconomic people are frequently the users of marijuana. I spoke with one worker at a potato seller. She said the types of drugs and the many drugs are so strong and so hardcore that she's almost afraid to work there. So more users, more addictions. Potencies in Colorado, the ranges of potencies for marijuana are 17 to 38% right now. And it seems like these percentages and figures change almost from month to month. And I agree with Mr. Coleman that the data is coming in at such a new level that we need time to really look at some of these issues. The concentration ranges of concentrated marijuana THC levels, 68 to 90%. The rules are changing. Marijuana is not necessarily a gateway drug anymore. We talked to a counselor in Denver, and she said that at one point the students were just bored and they would switch over to hardcore drugs. Now they don't have to switch over. When you're at 68 to 90%, you're already on a hardcore drug. So the treatment centers, we extrapolate that. We talked to Dr. Stone in the Denver area, up 20% last month. Those are costs. We will have to face that here also. Driving under the influence, police costs, robberies, thefts, those are costs, and we have to pay for that. Treatment centers, the costs are going higher. Teachers' time, they talk about, they come to the school, they're not clean, they're not clothed, they're not fed. The teacher can take up to noon time before she can start her work, or he or she. So those are costs, and we pay for that in our schools. The shelters are getting larger, the homeless numbers are rising. The cost to our state, the driving home high, the interdiction where they're setting up the roadblocks, the Oklahoma-Nebraska lawsuit against Colorado now, illegal grows, police and sheriffs and SWAT teams, those are costs, those are social costs. We're spending a lot of money on these things. Colorado Springs hospital costs, they lost $3 million in non-recoverable due to marijuana issues. Pueblo hospitals, more treatment to 18 and younger from ingested marijuana. 1/2 of the newborns tested positive for THC. That's coming here. So those are costs. Parkview Hospital, President and CEO Michael Baxter, marijuana is harming our community, unquote. So the police costs, I have figures here from the DA's office. 2013 drug-related, 86. 2014 drug-related, 102 cases. 2015, 223 cases. 2016, we're one shy, 222 right now, and we've got 4 more months to go for the year. Breckenridge, Silverthorne, Dillon, Summit County, same thing. Drunken driving, marijuana, under the influence, the arrests are higher and higher. They keep going up. So we're looking at these costs. These are hidden costs that communities are paying. Colorado Springs does not have sales of marijuana in the city, and they're a booming city. They don't need the extra tax revenue. We need our booming city here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. Please. Mr. McCann, did you want to say something as well on this topic?
Might as well.
Approach the podium, please. Just so happened your card came up next,
Yeah,
sir.
well, I know, it happens. It happens. Anyway, just like alcohol, if one beer is good, 5 are better. You want to keep it from your kids. And what really scares me with young kids, toddlers, is this candy marijuana stuff. Now, they'll put anything in their mouth. So if you have this candy marijuana around your house, hopefully there aren't young children there. And toddlers, you know, if you're not responsible, they can be across the street just like that. That's just how it is. You know, everybody does the best they can. And I try to support veterans at funerals around the valley. I was at one today in Sanford Cemetery. And if anybody's earned the right to have marijuana when they want, as long as they're not driving, it's our veterans, because they see horrible things, and a lot of them see it at a very young age, and they come back from war really emotionally disturbed, and it takes them a long time to come down from it. Just be responsible. You know, it's like anything else. Hey, and frankly, and as you know, the biggest problem in the country is alcohol. Has always been there. Prohibition doesn't work. The criminals will take over. And today around the valley, you can't have anything with adults without having alcohol. And let's face it, some of those people are driving home. If they were pulled over, they'd flunk the alcohol test. You know, just be responsible, especially with your kids.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Julie Mordecai.
No, just trying to keep things smooth here.
Thank you, Counselor.
Rather than clapping, which is disruptive, if you agree with a comment from a speaker, just raise your hand afterward, and the council can get a good feel by that. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that. Julie, thank you. Turn on.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the question, I was thinking we were having a meeting to decide if we should put it on the ballot after we had enough signatures. And I didn't realize we didn't have enough signatures. But I do want to be very clear how I feel about this, having had knee surgery. And my husband, who has never smoked marijuana in his life, handed me an article today. And I wanted to just tell you that it's worth reading when you're doing your data and research, called Can Medical, and I know it's saying medical, but when you have to pay for medical, you pay more money than if you go to get it recreationally, because it's cheaper recreationally. You don't have to pay as many taxes. Can medical cannabis break the painkiller epidemic? And the data in this, which is very interesting, says that that it actually is keeping people from getting addicted to opioids, because people are not having to be on opioids as long. And that was my experience. I'm going to be out about my experience. I had knee surgery 2 years ago. And I have talked to my doctors about it. I wish doctors could actually prescribe it, because it changed everything for me. I couldn't sleep at night. I was able, if I took one hit of marijuana, which I got legally, it wasn't illegal, so I was doing something legal, it made it so I could sleep through the night. I tell all my friends, if you have knee surgery, please do this. And the thing is, for me, what I want to say about it is, when it becomes available recreationally, it makes it so that it's cheaper for people to get it medically. That was really good for me personally. And I really want to see that happen for people in this country where I could get off the really bad stuff in 2 or 3 days. I mean, and I can see how people can get addicted to opioids. So I know that there's a lot of people that don't feel the same way as I do, and I respect you, and I also was a teacher, and I don't want to see little kids on this stuff, but I do believe that we've got to make it, for me, I want to normalize it a little bit more so that people like me can get a hold of it to take care of these issues, because it really, really helped me. So I'm out now. Everybody knows now.
Thank you, Julie. All those that agree with Julie's statement, please raise your hand. It's about 10 of them. Daniel Wood.
Mayor?
Go ahead. Councilor Vihil.
If I may, just so for us, for me personally, if whoever comes and speaks, can you let us know where you live, please?
65 6th Street, Daniel Wood. The issue for me and my family is very, very huge. I have 4 small children, and my wife has a severe blood disorder, and it's triggered by things like mosquitoes, foggers, and things like this that we didn't know we were moving into this community of this. So far, I've had to wake up with my wife in anaphylaxis shock. EpiPens are out of the picture. She can't tolerate these kind of things anymore. The marijuana instantly stops the hives, the reaction that she's having. And I also feel that the research that's going on is being swept under the rug. It's a lot of false research against a lot of people that are very biased towards this stuff. My wife and I have responsibly used this medication now since we've lived in the state of Colorado. The opiates, I took opiates since I was 19 years old, and I worked in the telecommunications field for 18 years. In the 18 years that I worked, I used opiates on a regular basis, muscle relaxers, anti-inflammatories, which led to the depression and the head meds. I erased all those medications with the use of marijuana. I can also no longer tolerate any of those medications, because if you've used any type of opiates for a certain amount of time, your body will reject it. And I've gotten to a point in my life with a broken back, I can no longer rely on those opiates. It's not a question anymore. And I came to this state because in other states it's not legal, and I would have been sitting in jail and I would have died by now. And I would have never got to be the father that I need to be for my children. I'm there every day. I took an early retirement. I have 4 children, and I spend every waking hour, every sleeping hour, worrying and teaching my children about drugs, about alcohol, about all of it. And it's a great concern to me. But also, my children are my genetics. And if anybody knows anything about genetics, my children also inherited my wife and I's conditions. So when they're going to need medication someday, thank God there is marijuana for them, and it will stop their anaphylaxis instead of paying $600 for an EpiPen. I don't use marijuana for my children at this point, but if it ever became an issue, and doctors from Jewish National have said, this medication is working for my wife. So that's about all I've got to say about it, and it needs to be, I've tried to work. I've heard this so long in my life since I've been on the marijuana. I've been pushed out of my job. I was legally prescribed marijuana in Ohio through a pill, and they pushed me out of my job, forced me to take an early retirement. And since then, I've not been able to enter the job force. And I've had people consider, just looking at me saying, what a bum, what a mooch. Well, I worked for 18 years with a broken back climbing towers to support my family, okay? So this is severe, and it needs to be recognized as a medicine, not as just somebody out partying having a good time. It has its benefits, and that's what needs to be recognized and not swept under the rug. The doctors actually need to start researching and doing the research and allowing this research to be brought to everybody's attention instead of being swept under the rug. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Andrew
And
Hobbs?
a show of hands.
A show of hands, I'm sorry. Okay.
Hello, I'm Andrew Hobbs, 6551 County Road 10 South. I'm not in the city, but I believe everyone in the city should be allowed to vote on whether or not they want recreational marijuana, medical marijuana, grow ops, whatever they want. This is about the political process more than it is about your actual view of whether you use it or not. I will be open. I've been open before. I do use marijuana. I use it every day. If it was not for the salves, I would not be able to get through a day. I have severe back spasms. I've had a spinal surgery. I have full instrumentation. I've gone to chiropractors. I've had Marcaine injections. I've dry needling, acupuncture. Nothing works. Marijuana does for me. It might not work for all of you, but like I said, the whole political process is what this is about. I want to have a vote. I can't vote in the city election. Hopefully the county will be smart enough to go ahead and go along with it and put these questions, whatever y'all decide, on their ballot, because I will vote for it, for recreational in the county. It can only be good for the county. I already know of people that want to open up shops in the city, in the county. That's jobs. You know, you talk about undesirable people walking down the streets of your storefronts. If there was jobs to be had, that would be not the case. Personally, it's a choice that we all have. I'm not going to judge someone because of their choice. It's pretty ridiculous that there's some people that still to this day, when they do go to the dispensaries, they hide while going there to get their medicine because they're afraid what some people will think of them because they're just there getting something that helps them. You know, all the medicines I've taken, I've been addicted. My doctors have given me pills that I've been addicted on. It's time. It's time now. Everything is, it's going to happen whether y'all vote for it or not. It needs to happen now so you don't waste money. It's the taxpayers' money that are going to have to pay for this special election if y'all don't decide to put it on now. And I think if you do decide not to put it on now, you're making a mistake. So that's all the time I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ferris Burvig.
Show of hands.
Show of hands, please. I'm sorry. Ferris Burvig. Thank you for being here, Ferris.
Thank you, City Council, for this opportunity to be here for a few moments this evening. I know that everybody's got opinions about everything that goes on in the world, whether or not you watch television and you try to be convinced to buy the right brand of beer, the right brand of soft drink, or whatever it is. And it goes on and on and on, and it makes no difference here. But there's two or three things that I think we have to take and seriously keep in mind. Last week, in the Pueblo Chieftain, there was 2 or 3 different articles that talked about the problems that recreational marijuana are creating for law enforcement and the medical personnel, and that's a pretty good-sized county. And I read those, but I wish I'd have saved them, but I didn't. I forgot to do that. Law enforcement is going to be besieged with more problems than they ever can imagine if we open it up with recreational marijuana. Now, medical marijuana is a whole different situation, Council, and where that is necessary for those people that have to take and use something like that, so be it. I made a couple notes here. The special election costs are nothing to sneeze at. They're going to be very high. But more important, I think the impact of an organization that tried to take and get an excess of 300 signatures on the petitions to get this on a ballot failed. And that's telling me that this community, we're not exactly a metropolitan community yet. We're a small community. It tells me that we are not interested in having a recreational marijuana program. And I know that the city council and an article in the paper says, well, let's take and give consideration to having the citizen talk about it and vote on it. I think you got elected to represent us. I meant many, many years I sat on that curvature up there, and many, many issues really were hard to take and finally make a decision on. But it's your job to take and address the issues of the rights and not the right and the wrong, but the medical issues, the law enforcement issues, and all the other things that go along with it. That, if you got recreational marijuana, the medical price goes down, so be it. I don't know. I have 18 grandchildren and I have 16 great-grandchildren. And we brought those up to take and have a real respect for law enforcement, for the medical profession, and it's vital that marijuana does not become whether it's a candy bar or something like that or whatever. It's your responsibility as council members to take and look at what really needs to take place. And sure, you can shirk your duty and give it back to the citizens, but that's not what you got elected for. You got elected to make the decisions right here at this table.
Thank you very much.
I would encourage you to do that, and I agree with the majority of what's already been presented, and there's no sense in me rehashing it. But there's some good ideas out there as to what we need to take and look at before we take and put ourselves in a situation that we wish we never were at.
Thank you, Ferris. I appreciate it. Show of hands, please. Chester Jones.
I'm Chester Jones. I represent and stand for Calvary Bible Chapel here in Alamosa, 7160 Brush Lane. I actually live in Mosca myself. We teach and we want our people to live biblical values, consistent with the biblical values, and we want our citizens of our church to be represented in this community as honorable citizens. If we take just a moment and look around at what has happened with recreational marijuana around the country, we see that it is not held anywhere close to what we would find as a biblical value. I spoke with a representative from Pueblo City Council this morning. On their ballot this fall will be to vote to take away recreational marijuana in the city of Pueblo today. And so it's telling me something, that things are happening, that there are things in our communities that are not desirable. And we want desirable things in this community, and we're proud of our community. And anything that detracts from that, for our children especially, to see things in the values of families and in the values of our community that are not consistent with positive things, is a step down. So I would speak to the council this evening and oppose the recreational marijuana to be put on any ballot at any time. I know it's out there. I know that it's coming. I know it's around us. We need to stand strong as a community and not give in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All those in favor? Show you. Danny Ladoni. Thank you for being here, Mr. Ladoni.
Thank you for having me. Does this one work as well? It's for short people. I live at 918 Ross Avenue here in Alamosa. I spoke with you before a couple of weeks ago about this issue. For those of you who weren't here, I simply said that it seems very odd to me that we're even having a discussion about having a vote on what any individual can choose to put in their body. To me, that seems very strange in a country we call the land of the free. I think it is something of a delusional fantasy to imagine that marijuana isn't already a part of our community as it has been for many decades before, as is anything else that you could get, whether you do so illicitly or you do so above board. I'm somewhat disturbed by the notion that we would be deciding what someone could choose to open for their business, whether one were to go in and make a purchase at that business or not, with their own money, for their own body, to make their own decisions. I'm a young, able-bodied man. I don't have any of the health concerns that have been spoken about here earlier, but I respect anyone's right to try whatever they would want to be able to alleviate the conditions that they have. I'm certainly no expert on this issue, but when I hear people tell me that marijuana has been helpful to them in ways that other substances have not, I'm going to take them at their word, and I'm going to respect their decision to make that choice for themselves. No one has to choose marijuana or any other substance, all right? I tried a cigarette when I was 18 or 20 years old. I thought it was disgusting. Haven't had one since, all right? No law or ordinance or mandate is going to change my opinion on tobacco. Same thing with marijuana, or the same thing with heroin, all right? You could legalize heroin tomorrow, would not change my disinterest in injecting heroin, all right? This is a choice that we should be making as individuals, and if you choose not to partake in that business, if you don't like beer, if you don't like cigarettes, if you don't like energy drinks, if you don't like caffeine, that's your choice. That's a beautiful aspect of living in this country. And I think we should be very careful about making decisions that impact not our own, but the decisions of other people, right? I don't partake in a particular religion. Those of you who do, that's fantastic if that brings you meaning and purpose in your life. If you choose a certain substance, if you like reading a certain book, that's what I love about this country. And I hope that council tonight realizes that it is a matter of time, whether it's done in the near future or in the distant future on this issue, and that I would appreciate if we let the public decide on this matter. But even more, I would appreciate if we recognize that in some sense this isn't up for a vote. What we decide to put in our bodies is our choice. And I don't really see many small government conservatives wanting the war on drugs in their own houses and telling them what kind of plants they can grow and telling them what they can or can't do with their body. That's not the purpose of a democratic society. We make those choices for ourselves. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ladoni. Show of hands, please. Jason Kelly. Thank you for being here, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Council. Jason Kelly, 101 Levita Avenue, Alamos, Colorado. I just want to echo what Councilman Coleman said, is that what the issue is here is whether or not the process was followed. The process wasn't followed. I would remind the council that this issue has been voted on no less than 3 times already. The county voted to allow, and we put it to the ballot from the county perspective, we allowed medical marijuana. Put it to the ballot again for recreational marijuana, it was prohibited. The signatures didn't get obtained, therefore it was voted a 3rd time by silence. That's the process that we have. We have to respect that process. If they get the petition, if they get the amount of signatures that they need, and it gets put on the ballot, then we vote the merits. Then we argue the merits. We're not here to discuss merits of marijuana, whether it's good, whether it's bad, or any otherwise. It's whether or not it goes on the ballot and whether or not the process was followed. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Show of hands. John Haar. Thank you for being here, Mr. Haar.
John Haar, 13508 County Road 109 South. I'm an associate pastor at Living Water Bible Fellowship here in Alamosa. I'm a benevolence pastor. That used to be a job that we didn't have before, but Living Water is very concerned about the people that have needs in this community, people that are homeless, people that can't pay their utility bills. And so our church is very interested in helping people out with their needs. We've got a subculture that's been developed in the past couple of years. And what I used to do as a pastor is far different now than what I did before. A lot of counseling before. Now I'm a full-time benevolence counselor. I'll have 5 or 6 or 7 people a day come in that are homeless or about to be homeless that can't pay their utility bill. A lot of these people are people from another state that have moved here, and they tell me that disability is easy to get in Colorado, and marijuana is a way that they can alleviate their pain, a lot of it emotionally. And they can come here and maybe even make money and sell marijuana and grow marijuana. That's their ambition. A lot of these people are on disability. They get $733 a month, the majority of them. They come and their desire is to not have to work, to be able to use marijuana. But what happens is they use heroin sometimes. The cheapest drug they can use is what they use. It's not always marijuana. It can be methamphetamines. It can be heroin. But we've got an epidemic, and there's a subculture that is just on the edge of collapse. You may not see it. I see it every day, 8 hours a day. Not always 8 hours a day. I can't say that there's one after another, but I'll have 13 to 15 clients a week that we try to help. But the number one denominator is drugs and addiction. And I have grandchildren that may attend school here in Alamosa. You know, what someone puts in their body is really up to them. Mr. Ladoni is right about that. But I don't want that person around my grandchild. I want them to not be there. You know, that person has the right to ruin his life if he wants to, but not my children and my grandchildren. So if we allow it here, it's going to get worse. It's already really, really, really bad, and it's going to get worse. I was in the service. I broke my back. I've had terminal cancer. I've had quintuple bypass surgery, and I haven't had to use marijuana, and I got by just fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Har. Shauna yes, thank you. Sorry, I keep forgetting. Shauna Hobbs. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Hobbs.
Yes. Shanna Hobbs, 6551 County Road 10 South, Alamosa. So first I want to address the big white elephant in the room. I didn't get enough signatures, but it's not because the one conclusion that has been drawn by every single person here. There are many barriers. First of all, there's a lot of people that, surprise, are scared to put their name associated with marijuana that's going to be verified by a city official, and people are going to know where they live, things of that nature. There's a lot of distrust with the way that the system works. I don't want to vote this year. I don't live in the city. I'm just visiting. There's lots of different things that took place for that particular time frame for me not to gather those signatures. But the point of it is that there needs to be questions put in front of voters, no matter if it's this question or if you got it broken up. And there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and there's a lot of true information too. But it boils down to you guys putting in this question in front of voters so that we can decide individually our own conscience. There's lots of people that are here tonight that are going to learn some things. They're going to go home and they're going to research, and they're going to think about things differently, good, bad, and ugly. And we have no control over that. We have some influence by our words, but anecdotally and experience speak far more than Denver's research, Pueblo Chieftains reporting, individual people's own experience with a grandchild or someone who took a path that not everybody takes. The point of this is that it's safer as a recreational substance for anybody. So, number one, we have plenty of killer drugs out among us. Marijuana is not among them. You can do your own research on that, and you can find whatever you want to find as well when it comes to research. So balanced research is what I support. If you read something negative, go to a source where there's going to be some positive information too. And know that there's not a lot of research that's going on right now because of barriers of bureaucracy. But the point of this is that we ask voters now what they want, and they can vote it up or down. My inclination is the reason why there's such a big backlash is because they know it's going to pass, because it is desired in most communities across Colorado. Amendment 64 passed in Alamosa, Colorado. And there was not, this should not be considered a third vote. That is ridiculous. That is not representative at all of the vast majority of citizens in this county that I did not reach out to, that I did not speak to, that I did not, go door to door and get all of these signatures just to put this particular question. I would rather have it split up because that's more of an accurate measure of what people want. And all I'm saying is just allow everyone to vote on it. You don't have to wait. You don't have to kick the can down the lane. If it's affecting your reelection, I'm sorry. I'm not concerned with that. I'm concerned with social justice, safe access, and putting a chokehold on the black market that's already so prevalent here in Alamosa. And if it's not affecting our police force now in a negative way, they can put rules and standards in to where you don't have to have 20 stores. You can limit the stores. You can have a point system to see who opens those stores. Thornton just did the same thing. So I just encourage y'all to please allow everyone of Alamosa to vote for it or against it. Either way.
Thank you, Ms. Hobbs. Show of hands. Andrea Gay.
All right. Thanks for letting me be here. I live on Park Avenue in Alamosa, and I'll very quickly just echo what Councilman Coleman said. There's a process, and if you didn't get it this time, try again and see what happens. But I think it's there for a reason. We need to be careful not to set a precedent and use what's there. Let's not start something that will turn into something bigger later. I think the city would appreciate that. And then we can talk about the good and bad and everything in between of the issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea.
A show of hands.
Show of hands. Carl Wright.
I live at 703 Douglas Drive, and thank you, Council, for providing this opportunity for input from citizens of our city. I do believe there is the reality of a need for leadership in this matter. The fact that Colorado did approve the use of recreational marijuana across the state does not cloud the fact that we are seeing data come in that shows there are great concerns and costs to communities because of the use of recreational marijuana. I believe this is a forum not just for procedure of what should be on the ballot. I do believe it is a forum where we can encourage our leadership to see that there are safeguards in place so that our community is protected from the problems that we're seeing from the data that is coming in from recreational use of marijuana. We do know that this, and people who have spoken on the pro side of seeing this measure put on the ballot clearly show us that this is going to increase the availability of the drug. And that seems reasonable to conclude that it then will place more risk upon our minors. And it is proven that there are long-lasting hazards to the developing brains of children when marijuana is abused by children. And we really, one of the questions for leadership is, what kind of tools can you use to assess those risks to minors? We know that there are going to be costs in the social realm, but there needs to be an assessment of the risk for greater availability as it impacts minors in our community. So our democratic process has allowed us to elect representatives, and I believe that this is a forum that allows us to express to you that we would like to see protections in place, and the fact that medical marijuana is available and that there are reasonable steps for people to use in order to obtain marijuana medically. But also we would want protection for those who would be subject to the hazards of abuse and subject to long-term damage, and that being our minors.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Show of hands. Susan Robinson. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you. I'm Susan Robinson. I live at 10476 East US Highway 160. I'm a teacher here in Alamosa. I'm beginning year 39. And I have served on our response to intervention team for the past 9 years. And I am lending credence to what Mr. Wright has said. We have seen an increase in the number of children who come to us through the intervention process, through the response to intervention process. I would say that in the past 2 years and possibly 3, we have seen a large increase in the impact of drug use, negative impact of drug use on the part of parents as it affects children. And it's very hard to see young children who come to school hungry, come to school not ready to learn, come to school poorly cared for, because they are living in homes where drugs are abused. As I said in my letter to the editor that appeared on Tuesday in the Valley Courier, granted, many users of marijuana do not go on to hard drugs, but the majority of hard drug users will say they began with marijuana, with the use of marijuana. And my concern is the increased availability of marijuana and the easier access, which Mr. Wright has said. And that is a huge concern. I have had many teachers come to me yesterday and today and said, thanks for writing that. And the community does need to know that your educational system is impacted, negatively impacted. We have a responsibility as citizens to provide a healthy and positive environment for our children, and that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Show of hands. David Reschke. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you. I actually live in Monte Vista, but I've worked at 621 Main Street for the last 18 years, and I've spent more time in this community than at home, most likely. So I can definitely agree with many of the things that have been said tonight, and I could speak on, or continue to speak on those, but I'd like to bring up one side that maybe hasn't been addressed, and that is the side of the business being in our downtown. You'd be surprised how much shoplifting goes on in our community, and of course we can't relate this all to marijuana, but I would invite you to come into our store any day and see it's almost zombies walking around, and we'll just take stuff, and we'll call the police, and in many cases these are well-known thieves. And they basically are able to come into our businesses, get merchandise that they can sell on the street quickly so that they can get their drugs. And we get together with many of the retailers in our community, and we can see these individuals that if they're kicked out of our place, they'll go to Walmart or to Walgreens or whatever. They are doing what they can to get money to help feed their habits. And so it is a big concern. I know how much it is for our little JCPenney store. You know, it's thousands of dollars that are affected, that are part of that. And so that is a big concern. And if we increase the availability within our community, it just makes the problem even worse. The other concern that I have, in that 18 years, I've also seen our downtown change quite a bit, as you will know, with the empty storefronts. And that's a big concern for us, and we've been fortunate that our customers have continued to come, but they haven't had a lot of options, I understand that, but we are grateful for them. But there are many empty storefronts, and if this were made available and allowed to come into our town, I can easily see somebody trying to take up one of those storefronts with recreation marijuana available. And so I'd be very concerned with that. We have such a great desire and a great opportunity to leave a great impact on our visitors that come to our community. And I'd like to make sure that we're doing all we can to put our best foot forward in this community. So those are my couple of points. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Show of hands. Carol Bear. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Bear.
Thank you for having me, allowing me to speak. Do you want a physical address, or do you believe I live in my post office box? Physical?
Yes,
Okay. I actually live in Conejos County. I live in the Alamosa River Canyon, 2645 FDR 255. As you got, my name is Carol Bear, and I'm a business owner in Alamosa. I'm unable to vote on the issues because, as you know, I don't live in this area. So this is my opportunity to speak on what I can't vote on. And I think it's important that you hear the business owners and hear their views. And so we deserve a voice. Alamosa City is trying to improve their image. Is a marijuana hub the image that you want to portray? That's a question everybody needs to answer. You've been having meetings to speak with the residents and the business people, gathering ideas to improve the appearance of the retail image and traffic flow and the downtown and surrounding area. Is drug traffic what you're talking about? The Chamber and City Council, I thought, have been working to attract retail businesses to town to promote shopping and touring downtown and the surrounding area. I don't see that marijuana growing facilities, edible cooking kitchens, retail pot stores are what Alamosa wants to be promoting. I cannot see that's the reason for a tourist to stop. You know, I just don't see that that's what's going to attract people to our town to say, I'm going to pull over and go into that store. I urge each person to tour a pot growing facility, an edible kitchen, and a retail store. See how it looks from the outside, see the clientele going in and out, smell it, and decide if that's what you want in your town. See if you think that that's going to be the smell that you want in your town, the clientele you want coming in and out of your stores every day, lining up outside, waiting for the doors to open. Ask the business that is next to one of these facilities how they like having it next to their business and how they deal with that. And I understand money talks. And I know that's one of the reasons why this is a big issue. It's a lot of money. It's tax base, it's money that can be used. But marijuana is still illegal federally. So I don't understand how a city and a council, a city and a county can use that money from an illegal enterprise for anything. I still don't understand how it's being used for schools. I think it's wrong, personal opinion. And I know this is one of the reasons why it's a big issue. So banks don't let these entities have bank accounts. You can't run money through a bank account. So how is it that that's going to work? What about robberies in these facilities because they keep a lot of cash? You know, is that something you want next door to your business? Is that something you want next door to your home?
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Show of hands. Carrie Corman? Corman? Thank you for being here, Ms. Corman.
Hello, my name is Carrie Koyman, and I live at 714 Berkeley, Alamosa, Colorado, and I've been here a resident for all but 1 year of my life, and I've seen a lot of changes in our community. Some of them have been wonderful, thanks to the City Council. Recently, however, there's some big concerns. I've also been an educator for 25 years. My kids have gone to school here. Where I teach, I do K through 12 special ed. The use of drug use, the attitude towards it now is incredibly prevalent. The attitude towards working, their ability to think and function is greatly affected. I see students that walk out and they cannot get a job because they can't pass a drug test, and it's because of our attitude that we've developed in Colorado, that it's recreational, it's free, they talk about it more freely now. It's really a problem with our kids. We had a presentation of a police officer came to our school a couple years ago, maybe last year, I'm not sure, it was 1 or 2 years ago, and he said that the San Luis Valley is one of the biggest drug use places in Colorado. That shocked me so much. And as we've talked before, that marijuana is a gateway to it. I see that. I see it. It's not just something said. That's how they start. And they can't function. They can't work. I have a son who's an orthopedic surgeon at the Mayo Clinic. He's a resident. And he said, I am now ashamed to say that I'm from Colorado. I want us to say it. Can we hold ourselves to a higher standard, or are we going to let our community continue to slip?
Thank you. Show of hands. Mr. Terry Smith. Thank you for being here, Mr. Smith.
I'm Terry Smith. I live at 804 Douglas here in Alamosa. I've lived my whole life here in Alamosa, and I've done so because I love the community. I don't like what's going on in a lot of the other communities around the state or around the nation. And so, you know, we don't have to follow what's going on elsewhere. This is our community. I would just like to say one thing that other than's been said. There's procedures in place to legalize drugs and get them on the market. And if marijuana is this wonder drug, then they need to follow the procedure. It needs to be made a legal drug, sold in the pharmacies with a prescription from a doctor. And then there wouldn't be a problem. And so I agree with them. Let's follow the procedures that are in place. We don't have to create any new ones. You know, I've worked with people moving into this community for 30 years. I spent 30 years of my life working with the city and the county, trying to improve economic development here in this county. And I will tell you now, people love to move here to Alamosa because what we don't have in this community. And one of that is, you know, marijuana use. I can guarantee you 90% of the families that I work with that are moving this community do not want to see marijuana shops in Alamosa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Show of hands. Delbert Gay. Thank you for being here, Mr. Gay.
Thank you. A second time. It's already been stated tonight that costs associated with marijuana, medical marijuana, as well as recreational marijuana to a community soars. The young lady says it's not affecting the police department yet. Yes, it is. It's costing the city of Alamosa more to take care of the marijuana problems than it did 2 years ago. It's costing the county sheriff's department more to maintain and take care of those problems as well. It's costing the hospital here in Alamosa more. It's costing the clinics in Antonito, La Jera, San Luis, Del Norte, Monte Vista more to maintain and take care of patients that are not only on marijuana but are trying to get illegal prescription drugs. I heard that, not everyone that tries marijuana becomes a hardcore drug addict. That's probably true. But there was a survey that was done recently, and they surveyed hardcore drug users and asked them, what did you start with? And their comments were, well, we started with marijuana, and then we went to something else. It was stated by our first speaker tonight that marijuana has changed from the 1960s to today, that they're growing it and cloning it and breeding it so it's stronger and stronger and stronger. It's now a hardcore drug. Marijuana is a hardcore drug. Terry Smith just said, if marijuana is a drug that can be used medically, it should be controlled through the AMA and through pharmacies. I agree with that. If someone needs medical marijuana to alleviate the pain in his back, some other drug won't take care of it. If someone needs it to stop a convulsion, those things are fine, but they should be controlled. I take a medication called warfarin, and that's a blood thinner because I've had blood clots and they've gone to my lungs at times. And so I'm monitored. I take this drug so many milligrams every day. But if I go or high or low, above or below a certain point, my doctor adjusts that medication. They should be doing the same thing with marijuana. If medical marijuana is truly being used as a medicine for those things, it should be controlled and monitored by a physician. As far as what you guys are here to do tonight, they didn't have the signatures to get on the ballot. You shouldn't have even been listening. There shouldn't even been this hearing tonight involving should we put it on the ballot or not. They didn't have the signatures. As far as a special election, you don't have to have a special election. Let them try and get their signatures again, and if they get them, make them wait until the next general election and put it on that ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Thank you. Micah Jackson. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Jackson.
Thank you. My name is Micah Jackson. I'm a resident of Alamosa County. I live outside of the city limits. My husband and I own and operate Rustic Log Furniture, which is one of the larger private employers in the San Luis Valley. And I want to touch on the business perspective because I do agree with a lot of the other sentiments that have been said. But I'll tell you that it has been increasingly difficult to hire people who can pass a drug test to work in the equipment. And there is a direct correlation between substance abuse, substance use, whether legal or illegal, and workforce injuries. And we have safety policies in place in our business. to protect employees, to meet requirements with our workers' compensation and with OSHA. And so we have to have regular drug tests of employees and prospective employees. And as I said, it has become increasingly difficult. And I think that any short-term sales tax increases and maybe financial positives of putting these additional cells in the city would be far outweighed by the negative impact on our workforce for not only the city of Alamosa, but the entire San Luis Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Hans? Judith Greitz, G-R-I-T-Z. Thank you, Mrs. Greitz. Thank you for being here.
My name is Judith Greitz. I live at 8015 South Highway 285 outside the city. But I would like to echo what has been said. I would also like to say that laws are made to protect individuals and to protect communities. That's why we make laws. That's why it's required to have child-proof seats in the back for your children. That's why we have to wear seat belts, because common sense has gone out the window. So we have to make laws not only to protect individuals, but to protect our community as part of the purpose of it. And that's why it is necessary that we have laws that protect our vulnerable people, especially our young people. I would also like to challenge the City Council. I don't know if you have actually talked to teachers across in the system to find out what there is. We've had a few teachers that have said this. Now, Jan, I don't know. You are a teacher. Do any of your students ever come stoned to school in Center?
Not at the middle school level, but at the high school level, yeah.
It's not just the Alamosa District, and has been said. The police department, talk to our police officers. This is just going to put that much bigger burden on them. Talk to our teachers, talk to the police officer that is at the schools already, and find out what is really going on with these kids. They are our future, and we want them to be bright. We want them to take care of us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, I'm having trouble with this next name. I think it's is that Hermanson? Mrs. Zara Hermanson? There we are. Yes. Thank you for being here.
My name is Carol Hermanson. I live at 803 Duke Drive, and I'd just like to say I support what Judith and Dell and the teachers and Pastor Carl Wright and Susan Robinson have summarized for us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Hands? Amy Ortega. I'm down to the last three. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Ortega.
I'm Amy Ortega. I live in East Alamosa in the county. I work at Alamosa High School and have worked there for 16 years. The last 7 years, I have served as assistant principal. Every drug violation in our school comes across my desk. I'm not here on behalf of the schools, but I can't say that my job doesn't impact how I feel and my opinion and the reality that I work with every day. We do have kids living in homes where it's being used, and I don't want to see that made more accessible to our kids. There's already an avenue for medical marijuana use for those people that need it, and the cost, I think, the cost outweighs any benefit that we would get from taxes, in my opinion. We already have too many kids being affected by this. Thank you.
Thank you. Show of hands. Mr. Andy Levere. Thank you for being here, Mr. Levere.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Andy Levere, 815 3rd Street, Alamosa, Colorado. I'm the principal of Alamosa High School. Just like to say that my views tonight are mine and not necessarily represent the school district. And Amy and I work closely together on this. I'd like to point out that Alamosa residents already have access to marijuana, and we've heard 3 or 4 people talk tonight that they've used it and they bought it legally here. And so I also think that we don't need to expand that right in the city limits, because what we're talking about is a minor inconvenience. If a person wants to get it now, it's going to be, a 3 or 4 minute drive outside of the city limits, as opposed to, having it right here in town. So those people that want it can already get it here. And I also, work with kids that may have family and friends that smoke. It could be, an older brother or relative that drops them off at school, and if they smoke marijuana on the way to school and the kid didn't, they're going to come to school and they smell like marijuana, and then they just have that stigma about them from the people around them, teachers, classmates, things like that, when maybe they didn't smoke at all, but the stigma sticks with them because they smell like marijuana, or it's in the home, or something like that. So again, I'd just like to reiterate that we have a situation now where you can't purchase it in the city, but you can in the county, and that seems to be working for us right now. And also that we've worked really hard to reduce the rate of drug violations in our school, and it's actually rare that we do have kids. It's the exception when we do have kids that are high in the high school, and I'd like to keep it that way. I'd like to focus my attention and time on raising test scores, focusing on academics, and not dealing with drug issues or problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levere. Show of hands. Cynthia Walsh. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Walsh.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Appreciate the fact that you're taking this much time to hear the public speak out on this very critical issues in our community. My family is pioneer stock to the Valley. I love the Valley. It is a beautiful community, and I'd like to keep it that way. I've seen the outcome of what recreational pot operations have done to the beautiful community of Pueblo West. I was raised there as well, and my family was the 20th family out in Pueblo West. It was at one time a lovely community to be in. Now we see, when you go up there, you see stoned people walking the streets. I am an attorney. I'm living in Alamosa County. I am an attorney. I'm admitted to practice in Colorado Federal Court. As I was a prosecutor also in New Mexico, and I prosecuted primarily DWI cases. I'd like to point out that the White House has a website. It's called the Office of National Drug Control Policy. And on that website, you can find extensive details about the drug use, specifically about marijuana. Even the White House administration is opposed to legalizing marijuana. Now, I recognize that there are people who have medical issues and have found some relief from using medical marijuana. There's a difference between prescription marijuana and recommended marijuana. Physicians can prescribe prescription marijuana. There are several prescription versions out there. It removes the THC from the marijuana process. The dispensary marijuana still has a THC in it, which gets the person high. When you look, if you go forward with these, I hope you look at the damage that the growing operations do to the water system. It uses more water than any other agricultural process. It uses more electricity than any other process. Tonight you talked about the sewer systems here in the city. The marijuana process uses an extensive amount of water. It produces toxins, has a high level of heavy metals in the output. The waste product also has to be managed properly. All physical waste product has to be cut in half with other substances and then disposed of. And where is it going to be stored and how is it going to be disposed of? Those are state regulations and laws. You need regulations on recognizing that we need to recognize that the taxes that are raised will not cover the other spill-out effects of this. It will not cover the emergency room visits, the problems in our public schools. And I'm sorry my time is out, but I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Walsh. And we have, thank you, and I've got one card left, and this is Andrea Oaks Jaramillo. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Jaramillo.
For having us and entertaining this discussion. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the fact that this did not make it into, it did not make it through petition. I have to say, I actually did not see that petition, so I was interested to hear about this after the fact, and so that's why I came this evening. Also, to be very open, I am not a user of marijuana, but I think that there are some benefits that this could bring to this ballot. First of all, I wanted to point out the fact that if it is added at this particular time, my understanding the cost to do that would be about $4,308, as opposed to the cost of $10,000 to $15,000 if it were taken to a special election. So I would like to point that out, first of all. Second of all, I would like to point out that the retail marijuana special sales tax, which is 10%, is distributed to local jurisdictions at the amount of 15% of total special sales tax. And I just want to point out that to Antonito, which I feel is relevant to our area, that total from April 2016, the total that they have incurred at this point is $12,137. I think that's a fairly substantial gain for that particular area that could be useful to our area as well. Salida's gain since April 2016 is $16,412. So I just wanted to point both of those pieces out. We've heard a lot of assumptions about the cost that it may or may not occur to the community. So I wanted to actually point out some financial figures that go along with some of the benefits associated with. You know, I live right here in town, incidentally, so I actually live in the city limits of Alamosa. So I just wanted to point out those two factors. And also, on a third note, we've heard a lot about the problems of drug use in the valley, and I fully agree that that is definitely something that we have to look at and recognize. But I would like to say that we have 3 of the leading counties in the state of Colorado for drug-related overdose deaths. Those overdose deaths are not related to marijuana. You can actually check with the any of the police departments, any of the sheriff's offices. Those deaths are related to opiate type-based drugs. They're related to methamphetamines, they're related to heroin. People that have had drug addiction problems to opiate-based drugs, such as Percocet, painkillers, all of those type of drugs, are now finding relief and quick fix through going out and buying heroin and methamphetamines, which are far cheaper than not only the prescription drugs, but any of the marijuana that you would find either in a retail shop or in a medical-based shop, both of which do not show any, have any overdose-related deaths to this area. So,
Thank you, Mrs. Jaramillo. Appreciate your comments. Show of hands. Well, Counselor, that does it for citizen comments, citizen participation. Any comments from council? Or Eric, would you like to say anything, or?
No, I have nothing to say. I just wondered whether you wanted to find out whether there was anybody who had not filled out a card who wanted to and still make a comment.
Okay, that's great. Do we have anybody in the audience that didn't fill out a card that would like to have a say? I think it's all been said, Councilor. Council, there's one there. Sir, please approach the podium. Give us your name and your address, please.
My name's Adrian Mestas, and I reside in San Luis, Colorado. We do have a medical business here in Alamosa. We're fortunate, we're thankful for that, and we appreciate the business that we have. I agree with what this gentleman said, Mr. Coleman, though. Being in business, we want to do the right thing. When we come into a community, we're citizens just like anybody else. We're not drug thugs or people that want to do harm to a community. And by hearing what the people say here and stuff, I believe that all these folks are right. There is a due process to everything. I'm in the business, I have recreational businesses, but when we go into business, we want to do this right. There's laws that have been put in place. The state of Colorado has allowed for these businesses to take place. Obviously, every community has the right to decide how they want to do it, time, place, and manner. So I believe that these folks are right and just in asking that the due process is followed. You know, if it requires signatures, if that's what the law asks for, then I believe that's what we need to go with. I believe that if us as a group that are in favor of it, well, we should be able to get the signatures that are needed to follow the due process. I don't believe that if we skip any of the processes or any of the things that are in line to go into this, it can come back to bite a person later. I would rather see it done correctly, have the process done correctly, and let the people speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mestis. Hands? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wanting to speak? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for discussion. You guys want to think about it a little while? Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councilor Hensley was first, though.
You can go.
Okay.
You're good.
Thanks. I actually really wanted to start with a question for Eric, clarifying, I think one of Mr. Gay's comments about pushing the election, if the number came through. My understanding is even if the petition continues to go, the special election that would have to happen in January or around that time is the date that I'm remembering for timeline purposes, we couldn't add anything to or make any changes as a city. Can you kind of clarify that special election process for me, please?
Yes. Under the city charter, when a petition for a ballot initiative is turned in with sufficient signatures, the city has to hold a special election on that question that was presented as presented, can't change it. Well, let me back up. The council can adopt the proposed ordinance as written within 30 days of the petition being turned in. Otherwise, the city holds a special election within 90 days of the petition being turned in unless there is an already scheduled election to occur within that period. So the January date that you're remembering is the date that the petition is valid for, I guess I would say. The language was approved, and that date of approval started a 180-day clock ticking for getting signatures. That expires in January. So if it were turned in January, you would have to have an election in February, March, April. Additionally, your other question was, can we put anything on the ballot? We could put other issues on the ballot, but what we cannot put on the ballot is a taxation issue. Those may only, under Tabor, those may only be presented on November ballots. So you could look at a situation where there was a special election and various marijuana facilities might be approved by the voters, and you would not be able to put a tax question in front of the voters until November. As far as whether you would collect revenue during that period of time or be missing out on revenue during that period of time, we had talked before that my recommendation would be if there were an election resulting in an affirmative vote to allow marijuana facilities, that you institute a moratorium on such facilities for approximately 6 months so that we can think through regulatory issues that you'll have to have in place before any such facilities could open. So probably wouldn't be missing out on much revenue, assuming that you got an affirmative vote on the Tabor tax question.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councilor Hensley.
So what I'd like to do, first of all, is I'm very proud to live in a community that has so many passionate people that have come to this meeting on both sides. And it just really warms my heart. And it was great to hear so many people talk about something that means a lot to them. So I'm proud to be on council and represent so many of you. So I first wanted to start off there. I guess I wanted to walk through my process, and I'm going to be honest. So a couple of weeks ago when we talked about this, I initially thought, you know what, I think I'd like to have that control of being able to put things on the ballot. I started thinking about the idea of that it's going to cost the taxpayers so much more money if it goes through in a few months, that type of thing, so saving the taxpayers money. Then from the side of where I'm looking at economics is that, gosh, there's that potential that there could be so much money that's brought into our community. Then you hear about the side where obviously there could be a lot of costs. And then obviously the political side or the debate, whether it becomes beliefs that people have on both sides. I will tell you that I have many friends and many people I know out in the audience on both sides of the fence, and I actually really looked at both sides, and I was going back and forth. I will tell you what I've decided for myself is it does come back, and I think I kind of heard this on both sides, is it really comes down to the political process. And so what I've kind of decided in my mind is bringing this back to basics. I feel pretty confident. I'm sure at some point we'll probably get the signatures, and it's going to be on the ballot, and this isn't something that's going to go away. But I think I now support the side that it should go through that process of getting the signatures, and then the way it's written is then the way we go ahead and take it to those steps, versus trying to second guess and thinking, okay, well, if we write it a certain way, or that it is going to save some money, things like that, but putting it through that process. But I just wanted everybody to know that I'm really proud of being part of a community that has this much passion.
Thank you, Councillor Hensley. Councillor Behill.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Councillor Hensley, I'm really happy to see this room packed. I hope you all come back in a couple weeks when we talk about stuff that's not so heated. I want to comment on something Mr. Bervik said. He said it's our own job to make the decision, and I think he's absolutely right. We, as councilors, have the power and the duty, I think, to either keep the moratorium that we have in place, or vote for it, or vote against it. I don't understand why it would have to go to a vote when in 2012 it passed. It passed here in Alamosa. Here are some numbers for you. In Alamosa County, Amendment 64, yes, 3,691, no, 2,855. That's a 56 to 44% range. And as the gentleman said there in the back, the county put this on the ballot as well in 2014, and then it was defeated. The noes had it 3,020 to 2,134. That's a 59 to 41% range there. Just some more numbers, because I like to get into numbers and I like voting and elections and that. In 2012, the more specific results, we have 8 precincts here in the county. 2 of the precincts are strictly county. 6 precincts are either partial city, partial county. In precinct 1, which is mostly in the city limits, which is the central part of town, the yeas had it 435 to 207. In precinct 2, which is mostly in the city, also around the central part of town, the yeas had it 439 to 271. In precinct 3, which is a majority in the city limits, the yeas had it 596 to 533. Precinct 4, which is only a small part of the city and most of East Alamosa, the yeas had it 648 to 555. Precinct 5, which is strictly county, the yeas were defeated 266 to the noes 269. Precinct 6, which is partially in the city limits and more of the southern part, 405 yes, 271 no. Precinct 7, which is also partial city and the southwest part of the county, 622 to 381, the yeas had it. Precinct 8 was soundly defeated. That's all of the county. That precinct is all in the county. 280 yes, 360 no. So, and then today, everybody's here, you know, and that, and I counted, and the reason I count, again, I like numbers, 11 out of 19 people who are against this are in the county. Now, I truly respect what you're saying, and your words have value. For those who are for this, here at the hearing, 5 out of 8 were in the city, 3 were out in the county. And yes, I am a teacher. And I see this, and I tell my students every day, just like Mrs. Robinson does, don't do drugs, they're bad for you. And marijuana is part of that, okay? But an adult who goes to a liquor store and buys a 6-pack and then gives their child a beer, I have no control over that. I think there's some personal accountability that needs to be with that person, okay? But I am a little bit afraid that if this goes to if it has to go back to getting signatures, which is a very valid point, we don't have any more, I don't know if we have control. And I agree with everybody in here. I don't want this to become Denver, where there's a pot shop on every corner. That's insane. The town of Trinidad has 17 pot shops, and the town of Trinidad is smaller than Alamosa. That's crazy, okay? I don't want, so 2 weeks ago we had the work session, and our chief of police said that if this were to pass, and if this were to go to the voters and it were to pass, his force could handle a pot shop or 2. Well, I think that's reasonable. I don't want to see cultivation. I don't want to see manufacturing, because we're not ready for that. But yet, in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming, and it's going to keep coming. So I'm thinking right now, let's have the opportunity to control it and tax it and put it in places away from churches, away from schools.
What makes you think you won't have
Sir. Dale, I'm sorry, but we're not taking any more audience participation. Go ahead, Mr. Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. But so what I've heard tonight here, for those who are against this, and my numbers are probably wrong, but I think maybe a quarter to a half of those people discussed some validity towards medical marijuana and how it does help folks. So I would say maybe tonight we look at just allowing on the ballot whether we allow medical marijuana or not. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Stefano.
I also think that we should follow the process. If we want to raise taxes, we got to go to you people. You're our constituents. You talk for us. We are your voice. We hear what you say. I believe that, and this is my personal opinion, because I believe that our kids are having enough problems right now. To add on another thing about they can get marijuana downtown, another thing, I have another issue with that. I believe that right now we have county medical marijuana facilities. There's some in Fort Garland and Nido. Why does Alamosa have to be the hub of everything? We're going to take all the money from these other people because we want money. Is money more valuable than our kids' lives? To see them trashed, stoned in school, can't function. I've been there. I know what marijuana does. I'm not like Mr. Clinton. I smoked it and I inhaled it. So when I was younger. So I know the effects. It kills motivation. It killed my motivation. I didn't feel like going to work. I didn't feel like learning anything. So we got to deal with a lot of consequences here. The police department has to be trained on how to detect people who are driving under the influence of drugs. That costs money. The facilities that we talked about, emergency rooms, is this really all about money? Is money the most important thing in life? And these people that want it in the city, it's not about, it amazes me that they ban smoking in the bars and stuff, but you can go to Denver and you can smoke in a filled park with children there, your babies in your lap, sucking in all this marijuana smoke. It's just as harmful as nicotine smoke. So it's amazing to me how many no-nos in society have become yeses now. There was a lot of things that were no-no. Now it's okay. Do whatever you want. It's crazy. Are we becoming that kind of society where we just have given up on our values that we used to have that held the country and our cities dear? We're just giving it up for money? Is that what it's like? So anyway, that's my opinion. I think it should go to you people on a vote and let these people come up with all the required signatures that they need. When I became a city councilman, I had to go out and get petitions. They have to do the same thing. I had to do the same thing to get voted in. So we have a process. Let's do it through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stefano. Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I was born and raised in this community, and I've been on this council for a long time. And I have never in my life seen the problems we're having with drugs. We've tried everything. We've got a chief that is trying to hit every angle. But 2 dogs, we might need 10 dogs. I don't know what it takes, but we've been trying to hit this over and over and trying to see how we could partner with you people, with whoever we could partner to try to stop this, you know. And I know I've always been against drugs and marijuana and stuff, and I appreciate all the people coming here tonight and expressing your thoughts and stuff. But there's also a lot of people out there, and Dal probably knows this. You know, we have a big group that comes and speaks, and those are the people that really got the guts to come out here and voice their opinions. But there's a lot of people out there that call us and say, hey, you're a representative, you know, and we ain't going to show up, but you better talk on our behalf, you know. And so far, in weighing this matter, I see it, in my way, it's almost 50-50, you know, where there's 50-50 people for it and against it. And like I said, the people don't show up on this. People don't sign petitions and stuff like that. But there is a democracy way of doing this, a fair way of doing this, and we will. I was against Mr. Coleman's thoughts of waiting and putting it on, but I also looked at it like Liz was at the money it's going to cost, because it's going to come. They're going to probably get the signatures, and I was looking at the fact that, you know, right now if we put it on, it's going to cost $4,000 something, but later on it'll cost $15,000 to $18,000, you know. But it's going to come. But I, like I said, do it the democratic way. You know, let everybody. If it's going to pass, it's going to pass. If they're going to go against it, they're going to go against it. You know, I think that's the only fair way to do it. And like I said, I appreciate the fact that you guys come here, and a lot of times we'll get people here for when we're raising water. We get big crowds like this. But you know, we need to at least maybe follow the procedures, as Mr. Coleman says, and if they bring the signatures, it's going to happen. You know, but drugs are a problem, folks. It's a bad thing, and I don't know which way to even turn sometimes, you know. And the school, you know, the heroin's killing our kids, you know, and we're stuck, and I don't even know what the answer is, but is through the procedures, I guess, that we should follow, I guess, and then allow it to, if it comes, it comes, and if it don't, well, so, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I got to ask my question earlier. Now I get to talk about my process, I think. I appreciate everyone coming out. and I appreciate the passion everyone had and shared. The challenge I have is I also feel like there was a lot of judgment about assuming negative things and assuming irresponsibility, and I don't think that's fair either. And so while I understand that there are major, major concerns with access to drugs for our children and access to things that are not okay, we also have to recognize that what is legal in our state is for people over 21. What would be expected by our businesses is that they would follow all the rules and regulations. Almost everything that we talked about tonight was about personal opinions and choices, which are very valuable. What is our decision tonight as council is whether or not this goes to the ballot. And I do believe that the signatures weren't gotten. And I do believe that that process has to be followed and that we need to do this as a community. But I would like us all to take the chance to really appreciate the fact that, what was it, 27, 28 people came up and shared their very personal, very real stories. And thank you for that. And we have this responsibility that I know we got elected to do, but I'm not overly thrilled about it right now. And I think that what I am hoping for our community is that we can really look at this, whether it comes back, whether it doesn't. I think Councilor Griego is right. I think Councilor Vigil is right. At some point, the community has to tell the city what they want. I think 7 people, even though we represent all of you, should not necessarily be the ones with that final decision. So I'm really excited to go through the process, see if we wind up having a special election, seeing if we don't. But I don't feel like we followed the process that needed to be followed up to this point. And so that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Vigil?
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, can you just please reiterate and clear up for me if the folks who then go get these signatures, however they write the question, that's how it's going to be?
That's correct. So
Without us putting our input?
That's right. So you either adopt what they are collecting signatures on is a proposed ordinance. And I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but my recollection of that ordinance is it's pretty simple, and it essentially says the city shall allow any type of marijuana facility that is permitted pursuant to Colorado statute.
All the different 7 types?
All the different 7 types.
And if that passes, then it's allowed?
Well, if that passes, then all those 7 types are allowed, but that's an ordinance like any other. So council can then, that becomes an ordinance, and council can do with that ordinance what it wants. It can amend the ordinance, it can knock out some of those 7 if it chooses to do so. Of course, you do that in light of the knowledge that you're doing something counter to what just passed an election. But yes, the wording is set by the ordinance that is in the petition. And so not only does it say right now, all 7 types shall be allowed, it also says there shall be no regulation of those types other than regulations that are applicable to liquor licensing. So that's the language that's being circulated.
The other part, though, that goes to Councilman Daniel's question earlier was that if council wanted to put competing language on that special election, you could do that. The only thing you're prohibited from doing is a tax. So if you felt there was better language out there, and this is something we processed when we were not happy with the language that was on the petition, was what were our options if they received enough signatures? And so that was one of the options at the staff level we processed, that you can put competing language out there. You just cannot put a tax one unless it's a November election.
Well, that makes me feel better, because again, I just want to reiterate, my whole stance up here tonight was that us as a council control it before it gets out of control.
Well, I guess I'm the last one to speak. I, like Charlie, have lived here almost all my life as well. My dad graduated from Adams State College in 1958. I went to Central High. I was gone from the valley for 7 years. I came back in the late 70s and came back with my wife and 2 children, and I raised them both here. And so I know the value that this community has in raising strong, independent people. This is a tough one because, as our previous mayor stated, we are elected to do a job, whether we like it or not. We're elected to follow certain policy and procedure. And if we can protect the citizens from spending any more of their hard-earned money than we have to, maybe we should do that. On the other hand, I've heard from many constituents that say, let them follow the process, let them get their signatures, and if they get their signatures and take it to a special election, then we'll see where the chips are going to fall. We'll see what happens. Because really, in the end, it's going to be the people that are going to decide one way or the other. Whether we have a say as to the taxation problem or the taxation issue is preliminary at this point. If we pass an ordinance or a resolution specifically outlining taxes, then we've got something to fall back on. We've got the language that'll help us determine the outcome. But it's really up to the citizens to decide whether they want it or not. And whether they want it or not is going to be one of those issues that whether they have a special election or not, somehow or other along the line it's going to be taxed. Correct. Or we're going to take it to the taxpayers for a tax. Is that my understanding?
Well, it won't be taxed unless...
Initially.
It won't be taxed unless there's an affirmative vote.
Unless there's an affirmative vote.
To approve the tax.
My understanding is it failed in the county the last time. The county has 2 medical marijuana clinics. Most of the people that talked about using marijuana basically talked about using medical marijuana. They've got an outlet for that. And so at this point in time, you know, everything's been said. Everything's been said here, and so the only thing we have to decide, or I have to decide for myself, is whether we are going to basically put this on the ballot before the special election petition happens or not. And my understanding at this point in time, make sure that I understand this properly, is that they didn't have the signatures up until this point. They do not have the signatures up until this point.
They did not obtain sufficient signatures in time to get it placed on the November ballot.
On this November ballot?
Correct.
Okay. Now, do they have to start the entire process all over again?
No.
No.
They can gather signatures on that particular proposed petition, ordinance, until January.
Did we understand the language of that particular petition? And what did it say? I mean...
Do you have it there? Sure. Oh, I'd love to do that.
Please. I think that would help us to at least become a little bit more clear as to the language.
Yes, it says, the ordinance would read, "The City of Alamosa shall allow the establishment and operation of all types of facilities requiring a license from the State of Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division under the Colorado Medical Marijuana Code and the Colorado Retail Marijuana Code, and limit the adoption of any rules and regulations about marijuana sales to those enacted for the sale of alcohol."
Days, times, foreclosures, zoning regulations.
Okay. I'm beginning to understand that a little better.
We have no idea if they've collected signatures since submitting the original ones to the city clerk, so we're not sure where they might be at this point in time. They just did not meet the deadline for the November ballot.
Our option is, this is a question. we have the option of just considering a ballot question specific to only medical marijuana sales,
Yes.
to the exclusion of everything else.
You can put any facility or any combination of facilities before the voters.
Thank you.
Mayor, one more comment if I may.
Councilor Grego, yes.
I appreciate the comments that Councilor Vigil has pointed out, and where he talks about council control on what gets put to the people, whereas you just read what's going to go in front of them. Now, is there a way that you could read the text of ballot issue 1?
You want to read it, Councilor Grego? or?
No, I'll have the attorney.
Absolutely.
Just so the people will see, sometimes you're asking to do something later, and it might come back and bite you. So if we have control now of what gets put on there, and it has some controls.
That might sway? Is that what
Well,
you're
that's
saying?
what I'm saying. If the people listen to what we're thinking of putting on versus what they just read, and you got control, and you got control of taxing it, whereas you won't have control of taxing it for a period of time, you'll have those problems and no money coming in to at least pay for whatever the problem is if you're having problems on the taxing part of it. So, go ahead.
Councilor, would you read that, or?
I would be happy to. Bear with me because it has a lot of Tabor jargon in it. Ballot issue 1, this is the, depending on which version you're looking at, but this is one of the questions that you could propose. Shall the taxes of the city of Alamosa be increased by $750,000 in the first fiscal year, and that's a pure guess, beginning January 1, 2017, and by such amount as are raised annually thereafter by imposing an excise tax in the amount of 10% of the amount paid by the purchaser on any first transfer of medical or retail marijuana from a cultivation facility, medical marijuana center, or medical marijuana optional premises cultivation operation, an excise tax of 10% of the amount paid by the purchaser on any first transfer of medical or retail marijuana product from a medical marijuana infused product manufacturer or a marijuana products manufacturer, retail, and an additional sales tax of 10% on the sale of marijuana and marijuana products, both medical and retail, only in the event that marijuana facilities are permitted in the city of Alamosa based upon an affirmative vote of the qualified electors of the city of Alamosa.
See, so if you look at what we're trying to propose and what they're trying to propose, and then you look at the fact that if it goes through right now, we're going to pay $4,000. If it doesn't go through now, we're still going to pay $15,000 to $18,000 on it. Plus, we're not going to get tax it. We're not going to be able to tax it until for about 6 months or so. So that's what we have to weigh. You know, either it happens now or it happens later. Right now, as Councilor Vigil says, council has control of what can be put on there and how it can be controlled. And I understand Mr. Coleman's comments on procedure, but sometimes if you go procedure, it might come back and bite us on this. So I'm just throwing that out so you can look at both sides and weigh it and what this one looks like and what this one looks like, because it's going to come. You know, it might not come now, but it's going to come. And what are the actions afterwards? So.
Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for your input and suggestions and ideas. But before this get out of control in regards to what direction we're moving in, let's not forget what we're voting on tonight or thinking about tonight is the process. The process was not followed. By trying to bypass the process to put anything on the ballot, it could be perceived that you're undermining the process and the system that we have for future ballot initiatives that come before the city of Alamosa. We have to be conscious of a process. So that's what I want to make sure that you keep in mind as we go through this, is that the process is the applicant was supposed to receive how many signatures, Holly?
317.
How many did you receive?
She turned in 187, I think.
180 something. It wasn't 300 and whatever the number was. So without having that, those amount of numbers, here's why it's important. Let's just cut to the chase. The reason why we have petitions is to get a pulse of our community to see if they're interested in us moving forward or not. If we don't get the adequate amount of signatures, that's saying, no, we don't want this right now. I don't know how to put it any more simpler than that, because that's what it's all about. We get the signatures, we move forward. We don't, we wait. They go back, regroup, get the signatures, and we'll abide by the process. I don't understand what's the issue with it, but that's the way I see it.
And Ty Coleman, and Mr. Coleman,
Councilor Vihil?
Thank you, Mayor. I respect what you're saying, and I'm right there with you. I wish they would have gotten the signatures. I am looking out for the city. I don't, if they get signatures and put a question on there, and it passes, there's a chance there could be cultivation centers in town, and manufacturing centers in town, and our police department can't handle that. That is a valid point.
With all due respect, Councilman Vihil, and I respect your opinion, there's a lot of ifs, okay? But there's a process. If they get the signatures, if I'm not mistaken, listening to our attorney, we have some type of recourse to where we could make adjustments and modifications to the ordinance once it passed. But to bypass that process, I think is undermining the system that we have right now. And like you said, it could cause more work on the law enforcement. I asked Chief in our last meeting, and he mentioned to me if we get, 2 or more facilities, it could cost maybe 2 additional police officers. And if we want to do the math came out to be over $170-some thousand. So what, we receive $16,000 to $20,000 in taxes. That's not going to generate any revenue for our city when we're paying over $100,000 in labor for the law enforcement. So if we're going to talk numbers, let's stick to the numbers and be realistic about how effective. But let's think about the process. That's what we need to think about. Do we want to undermine the current process that we have right now and set precedents for other people who have initiative to go on the ballot to just say, well, we don't really have to get the required 300. As long as we get close to it, we'll be okay. I don't think that's the precedence we're trying to set here on council.
Councilor Coleman, I totally agree with you. You couldn't have said it better in any other language, because the process is what we really need to follow. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have been in this situation once before. I really believe that, sometimes you can get blackmailed into things that you don't want to do. And that's what I think is happening here. We're actually being blackmailed into doing something that we really don't want to do. And we're doing it because we're trying to protect our citizens. But I'm not sure that they want to be protected. I think they can, if it comes to pass, I'm sure they're going to have a voice out there. I don't know if that's the way you feel, Councilman Coleman, but that's kind of the way I look at sometimes.
Mayor, I don't think we're being blackmailed, but I think I'm not allowing to be blackmailed. But I think we have a choice and a decision to make, and I think we should at least start moving in a direction in which we can determine what we're going to do.
Absolutely. And so, Council, what are your wishes? I will entertain a motion, or do we have to go to public hearing?
No, you didn't
Okay,
have to go to
thank you
public
very
hearing
much.
in the first place.
Thank you very much. We've got on ordinance number 15, 2016, correct?
No.
A resolution.
You're
A
discussing,
resolution?
You're
Thank you.
discussing a potential resolution.
Okay.
And just so we're clear, if you're going to get a question on the ballot this November, you have to have the ballot language finalized and certified by September 9th. So you can still deal with you need to tell staff which direction to go, and we can then come up with language that gets you where you want to go, and you can approve it at your next meeting. So as far as getting ballot language, we don't have to have that finalized tonight, but we have to know which direction you're going tonight. If you do plan on calling an election, there's another agenda item that does have to be dealt with tonight, and that's the IGA approval. That's a very straightforward, very simple thing, but that has to be done tonight. Ballot language can be dealt with at your next meeting.
Thank you. Personally, I believe that, medical marijuana is probably something that should go on the ballot to the exclusion of all others. That's my personal opinion. Council?
I agree, Mayor, but I don't think the votes are on council tonight.
Councilor Vigil?
So then if no one's going to talk, then I'll move that we do not put any language on the November 8th ballot related to marijuana.
I will second.
I've got a motion and a second on not putting any language on the ballot or anything on the ballot. Is that my understanding? On marijuana.
Relating to marijuana.
Related to marijuana. Any further discussion? An affirmative vote is to not put any language at all on the ballot.
Correct.
Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Councilor?
So your next agenda item, I don't know how we massaged the agenda, but I think your next agenda item should probably be the consideration of putting council compensation on the ballot, because that will inform whether or not you even need to have the second reading of the IGA question.
Council? Any discussion?
I have some discussion, Mayor.
Councilor Coleman?
Okay, my discussion of this issue is, I believe in the last meeting, we had a consensus, and the consensus was 4-3 to not put an issue on the ballot for a pay raise. But somehow the next day, we get an email saying the consensus has changed to now 4-3 the other way. Please help me to understand how we can have a public meeting, have a consensus to decide not to do something, and then the next day it's allowed to change. That's what I need to know before we move forward.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. I believe our city manager may enlighten us.
I can offer a little bit, but then it's probably most appropriate for Councilman Stefano. After the meeting, I was approached by Councilor Stefano that he had misunderstood the question and that he was, in fact, in favor of wanting to look at the consideration of it. Since it wasn't a vote, it was more of a consensus item, I went ahead and moved forward, but I'll let Councilor Stefano explain what happened.
At the beginning, Mr. Coleman, I didn't understand the question, but by the same token, I was misconstrued because I was moving my hand, and they took it like I had made a motion to deny it, but I actually wanted an agreement to pursue a raise for the council.
Thank you, Councilman Stefano, for clearing that up. It's just that I don't want the perception of us having things done after an open meeting like we had. I don't want that to set the precedence for what we do in the future. That's why I'm bringing it out. It's not that I'm calling you out on for any reason, but the reason why I'm not going to really talk too much about it is because I've seen you in the past, you, Councilman Vigil, and the mayor, and Charlie, you've been for this pay raise and trying to put it on the ballot. So I know you did that before, so I could understand where that mistake came in. But I just want to make sure that we're clear that in the future, when we make a consensus, let's make sure that we stick to what we say, because that's what we're directing staff to do. And I think that's fair.
Thank you, I agree. It was just, It was a wrong motion. Okay, thank you.
Just as an aside there, in the draft council policies that we're working on, there will be a section on reconsideration and correction of previous motions and when that's appropriate in those circumstances. So that would be nice to have.
Actually, it was a consensus, and it was brought up during council comment. It was not part of regular business. I think it was basically there to direct staff in the appropriate manner. It was not something that we probably needed, and we did have a motion, if I'm not mistaken, but it was brought up during council comment.
I understand that, Mayor, and I respect you for that, but in my opinion, if we do something in a public format and we say we're going to do something, we should stick to what we say in public. The only reason I'm having this conversation with you all in public is because we had this consensus done in public. If it was done in any other way, we'd be having a different conversation. But I just do not want us setting the precedence that we could change the direction that we give staff overnight. That's not good.
And Mr. Coleman, I have to disagree with you. I don't think there's no backroom deals going on here. Mr. Stefano made an honest mistake. It wasn't a motion. It was a consensus, and Mr. Stefano did not understand the question. That's why he raised his hand. There was no backroom deal.
I didn't say there was a backroom deal.
You're making it a perception like it was.
Well, it has the potential to be perceived that way, Councilman Vigil.
Well, I'm clearing the air for everybody here. That did not happen.
Thank you, councilors.
And I respect Councilman Stefano for clearing it all up. I think it's all clear now. We're fine. I just want to let you know where I stand on the issue, just in case it happens again.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Coleman, and thank you, Councilor Vigil. Thank you, Councilor Stefano. Councilor Grego, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you. Maybe a little history on what's happened with compensation for council. And I don't know, when was the last time council even got any kind of increase? Holly, did you find that out? I think it's been.
If you give me 5 minutes, I could find it, but it's in the charter, and I think it was 96 or 7 or something like that. It has to be done through a charter change.
Exactly.
So that's what, 16 years? 20 years. No.
And Mr. Grego, could you also tell the history about the last time you all tried to get a raise or a cost of living increase and how that went?
Well, it was probably my fault, because what we did is we took what the commissioners are making. And I know my city manager has already told me those are two different forms of government, and emphasize the fact that how they operate and all that. But even though, if you look at the compensation that commissioners are getting and the compensation the city council's getting, it's I was trying to get maybe a third of it. So I'm the one that said that maybe council should get $1,000 a month, which it got shot full of holes, and at that time people didn't support it. But being on this council for a long time, I can tell you that there's a lot goes into this. And we got some council people out there too that know that there is a lot of work, and we're not here for the money. But by the same token, I think there's this, as we get further and further into the future, things are changing. We're adding different stuff. The city's growing. We're adding staff. We're bringing on our city attorney. We're bringing on these different people. I think it just has to move with that. And I know some people on council are against it, but some people, I feel that after 20 years, I was thinking that maybe if we could get a $200 increase, and then maybe even the mayor a $400 increase over 20 years is not really asking that much.
Because currently, right now, a councilor makes $400 a month,
400,
and the mayor makes $600 a month.
Correct. So we're not asking for such a large increase, and I think if you put the the amount of hours that you put into the position. It's not just a first and third Wednesday job. There's a lot more entailed to this position. And I just thought that maybe, once again, let the people make the decision.
Well, we don't have a choice, Councilor Grego. It's really up to the people to decide whether we get a stipend increase or not. But it never hurts to ask. I mean, it's one of those things where if you don't ask, I mean, you'll never know. But the question I have is would this be the only ballot question the city's going to put on?
So the thing that's changed since I think your interest peaked again for this more immediate election was if there was going to be another item that we were paying the $4,000, should we take advantage of that and add that to this? Based on your last vote, that would no longer be happening. So that means to put this before the voters, you would be paying the $4,000 for this item. I know in previous work sessions that we've had, it's hard. It's hard when you have to go to the voters to talk about a raise. That's never a fun issue. So I think counties or councils and boards across the nation that are faced with this, it's hard. And I think it's a very reasonable discussion to have, because if something hasn't been increased at all, the economy outpaces it. And so regardless of how big or small it started out, it's probably not accomplishing what it may have started out to accomplish. So I want to make sure everyone feels very comfortable having this conversation, because it's a very reasonable conversation. I think part of what we had talked about previously is if we were going to have an election like the one in 2017, that would allow us time to provide education, maybe look at wording that you felt was most appropriate, that type of thing. I think given the rush that we might be potentially putting something else on this accelerated a little bit more than what the previous discussions were. So I think that just to be aware of some of those nuances. But I want to make sure council feels comfortable having this discussion, even though it's hard when you're talking about compensation.
And Heather, I appreciate staff's movement in this direction. I knew that if something else would go on the ballot, it would be a lot easier for us to put this on. But spending $4,000 at this point in time to put something on the ballot, and the only thing that would go on the ballot would be council stipend compensation, I think would be, personally now I've changed my mind, I think it would be totally inappropriate. And so in that, I'd like some more discussion. Councilor Grego?
So let's say this thing comes back and it gets put on the ballot for a special election. Can council put their stuff on there too, or no? You're going to pay $15,000, you might as well get something out of it.
Well, yeah, there's no reason you couldn't.
My only recommendation to council then is if there is this level of serious interest, I'd hate for it to be last minute. I don't want us to just throw something out to the constituents, because if it's something you really believe in and you want to put it to them, then I think maybe we have to have more serious discussions leading up to that, that the potential might be there, to where then if it does happen, you guys have had time to flush out, if you do want to put something, what does that look like? Because there's a lot of variances. You could say we just want to do a $50 increase, or you could say we want to look at having an escalator for the next 5 years. I mean, there's different things that you would want to look at. So I don't think you want it to be last minute, which is you're going to be in that situation if they get the signatures. They're not going to say, hey, in a month we're coming with, more signatures. And since we meet, periodically. So if this is something where there's serious interest from council, I would just recommend that we need to move that up then if you're going to want to put it on a special election, so you're not caught by surprise.
Yeah. And I agree with the mayor. I'm not willing to spend $4,000 to put something on, even though it's been 20 years. So,
But some of us haven't been on council that long term.
Well, Charlie, it's one of those things when, I know you came in on the railroad, but, we don't have steam engines anymore, and unfortunately, the cost of diesel is just like really, really high. But anyway, so if, do we have to just not act on it? Eric?
Well, I mean, you've got it as an item. It would be useful to have a motion that you don't put that on the ballot the same way you had a motion that you don't put any marijuana question.
Thank you very much, Eric.
So with that, I move that we do not put any language on the November ballot in regards to council compensation.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second on not putting the language on the ballot for stipend compensation. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Is there any other business, Eric?
Well, you had the agenda item for consideration of the IGA ordinance with a second reading. I would suggest to you that that is now mooted because you have no questions that you are intending to put on the ballot.
Thank you.
I believe you have no further business.
So, all right. So with that, if there's nothing else on council, this meeting is adjourned.